The late afternoon sun dipped low over Asheville, North Carolina on May 30th, 2024, painting the rolling Blue Ridge Mountains in hues of amber and violet. It was 5:43 p.m. Eastern Time, the air thick with the earthy scent of pine and the distant trill of cicadas, a deceptive calm settling over the town. Inside a quaint craftsman-style home on Elm Street, 34-year-old Caleb Monroe sat at his dining table, the aged oak creaking under the weight of his open laptop. A half-empty coffee mug steamed beside him, its bitter aroma mingling with the faint lavender diffuser Elise had insisted on. On the table lay a DNA test kit, its packaging crinkled and discarded, a playful birthday gift from his girlfriend Elise Harper, who'd laughed it off as a fun way to spice up your family tree. Caleb, with his lanky frame and thoughtful hazel eyes, grinned as he tore open the kit, the plastic crackling in his hands. "Let's see if I'm secretly a king," he called out, his voice carrying a teasing lilt. From the kitchen, where the rhythmic chop of a knife against a cutting board echoed, Elise Harper, 32, poked her head around the corner. Her warm hazel eyes sparkled, her dark hair tied back in a messy bun, strands falling loose as she wielded a paring knife over a pile of carrots. "More like a pirate with that grin," she shot back, her laughter a melody that had anchored Caleb's world for the past 3 years. Their love was a quiet, steady thing, built on late-night conversations about opening a bookstore together, shared Sunday hikes, and the promise of a future painted in soft pastels. But as Caleb swabbed his cheek, the cotton tip cool against his skin, neither of them could foresee the storm this innocent act would unleash. 2 weeks later, the evening light filtered through sheer curtains, casting delicate shadows across the hardwood floor of their living room. It was June 13, 2024, 7:12 p.m., and the air carried a hint of rain on the horizon. Caleb and Elise nestled on their worn leather couch, her head resting on his shoulder, his arm draped around her. The DNA test results had arrived that morning, a simple email with the subject line, "Your ancestral journey awaits." Caleb scrolled through the ancestry breakdown. Mostly Scottish and Irish roots, a smattering of German, nothing unexpected for a man raised by a carpenter uncle in the mountains. But then he hit the DNA matches section, and his breath hitched. A first cousin match stared back at him, Nathaniel Harper, 35, sharing 12% of his DNA. Caleb's parents had been only children, his mother Margaret and father Thomas, both gone in a car accident when he was 10. "Elise," he said, his voice tightening. "Harper, that's your last name." Elise sat up, her brow furrowing as she leaned toward the screen, the glow illuminating her face. "That's strange. I don't have a cousin named Nathaniel." She reached for her phone, her fingers trembling slightly as she typed a quick message to her dad, Robert Harper, 62, a retired mechanic living an hour away in Hendersonville. "Dad, do we have a Nathaniel Harper in the family?" The reply came within minutes, curt and clipped. "No, must be a glitch. Leave it alone." Elise's stomach twisted, the carrots forgotten on the counter. She met Caleb's gaze, her voice a whisper. "What if it's not a mistake?" Caleb's mind raced. He clicked on Nathaniel's profile, finding a sparse bio. Adopted at birth, born in Asheville, searching for his biological roots. A contact option blinked at the bottom. Against the nagging voice in his head, warning him to stop, Caleb typed a message. "Hi, I'm Caleb Monroe. We're a DNA match. First, cousins. I'd love to connect and figure out how we're related." He hit send, the action feeling like dropping a stone into a still pond, the ripples yet to be seen. The next morning, June 14th, 2024, at 8:47 a.m., Caleb sat at the kitchen table, the coffee bitter on his tongue as his phone pinged. "Nathaniel's." Reply was brief but heavy. "I'm adopted. My bio mom was Anna Harper. She died in 1989. Murdered. They never solved it." "You're related to her?" The words hit like a punch to the gut. Anna Harper. Caleb's hand shook as he showed Elise, her face draining of color. Anna Harper, she repeated, her voice hollow. My dad's sister. She died before I was born. He never talks about her. The kitchen fell silent. The drip of the faucet, a relentless drumbeat. Caleb's thoughts spiraled. His mother Margaret had never mentioned a sister named Anna. His uncle David, who'd raised him after the accident, had spoken of family sparingly, always with a shadow in his eyes. Could Anna be the missing piece? Elise grabbed her laptop, pulling up old family photos. There, in a faded snapshot from 1988, was a young woman with Elise's hazel eyes and warm smile. Anna Harper, standing beside a man who looked eerily like David Monroe. We need to talk to Dad, Elise said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. Caleb nodded, the weight of the unknown settling between them. That afternoon, they drove to Hendersonville, the mountain roads winding under a sky bruised with gathering clouds. Rain began to fall, pattering against the windshield as they pulled into Robert's driveway. His ranch house loomed ahead, its porch sagging with years of neglect, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and motor oil. Robert answered the door, his grey hair disheveled, his mechanic's hands stained with grease. His eyes narrowed as he saw their faces, a storm brewing behind his gaze. What's this about? He grunted, stepping aside to let them in. Elise hesitated, then handed him a printout of the DNA results, her voice steady but laced with dread. Dad, Caleb's related to Aunt Anna. Nathaniel, her son, reached out. What happened to her? Robert's face hardened, his fingers crumpling the paper as if he could crush the truth within it. Don't dig into this, Elise, he warned, his voice low and rough. Anna's gone. Let her rest. Caleb stepped forward, his heart pounding, but his voice calm. She was murdered, Robert, and I'm connected to her. We deserve the truth. The air grew thick, the silence stretching until Robert sighed, the fight draining from him. Fine, but you won't like what you find. They sat in his living room, the faded plaid couch sagging under their weight, the scent of old tobacco, lingering from years past. Robert leaned back, his eyes distant as he began. Anna was my little sister. She was 24 in '89, beautiful, headstrong. She'd been dating David Monroe, Caleb's uncle, for years. They were tight, talked about marriage. But then James Carter rolled into town, a drifter with a silver tongue and a smile that could melt ice. Anna fell for him, broke things off with David. It ripped them apart. David was furious, said he'd never forgive her. A month later, June 12, 1989, Anna was found dead in her apartment, stabbed once in the chest. Cops thought James did it, but there was no proof. He vanished the next day, case went cold. Caleb's breath caught. David Monroe, his uncle, the man who'd taught him to whittle wood, who'd cried at his parents' funeral. Did you think David did it? He asked, his voice barely audible. Robert's eyes met his, hard and unyielding. I didn't want to, but he had a temper back then, and he loved Anna. Maybe too much. I saw him that night, outside her place, pacing like a caged animal. I didn't ask. Elise's hand found Caleb's, her grip tight. The dramatic irony was suffocating. Caleb, seeking a connection to his past, had unearthed a love triangle that might implicate the man who'd raised him, all while the woman he loved faced her own family's secrets. We need to talk to David, Caleb said, his voice resolute. Robert shook his head, his tone bitter. Good luck. He's buried that part of his life deeper than Anna's grave. Back in Asheville, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under streetlights. Caleb couldn't shake the image of David pacing outside Anna's apartment, the red jacket he'd worn for years flashing in his memory. Elise paced the living room, her voice trembling. What if my dad knows more? What if he's protecting someone? Caleb pulled her close, the scent of her lavender shampoo grounding him. We'll figure it out, Elise, together. The next day, June 15, 2024, Caleb called David, his uncle's voice gruff but warm over the line. "Come by the workshop, Caleb. We'll talk." The workshop was a cluttered space behind David's modest home, the air thick with sawdust and the whine of a sander. David, 60, with silver-streaked hair and calloused hands, looked up as they entered, his smile fading at their expressions. "What's going on?" he asked, setting down his tools. Caleb took a deep breath, the wood shavings crunching under his boots. "Uncle David, I took a DNA test. It matched me to Anna Harper, your Anna. She was murdered in '89. What happened?" David's face paled, his hands gripping the workbench as if it could anchor him. "Caleb, don't go there," he warned, his voice low. But Elise stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "We know about the love triangle. James Carter. And this." She held up the locket she'd worn since childhood, its silver surface dull with age. "This was Anna's. Why did my dad have it?" David's composure shattered, his shoulders slumping as he sank onto a stool. "I loved her," he said, his voice raw with decades of pain. "She broke my heart when she chose James. I went to her place that night, June 12, 1989, to talk, to win her back. But when I got there, she was already dead. Blood everywhere. A single stab wound. I panicked, took the locket, a piece of her to keep. I didn't tell the cops I was there. I was scared they'd blame me." Caleb's heart sank, the confession a dagger to his childhood memories of David's quiet kindness. "Did you kill her?" he asked, his voice breaking. David met his gaze, tears streaming down his weathered face. "No, Caleb. I swear on your parents' graves I didn't, but I saw who did." The workshop fell silent, the sander's whine fading into the distance. David's voice dropped to a whisper, the weight of his words crushing the air. "It was Robert, your dad, Elise. He was obsessed with Anna too. He never forgave her for picking James over him. That night, I saw him leaving her building, his hands shaking, blood on his sleeve. I didn't say anything because he was my best friend. I thought he'd confess, but he didn't." Elise's knees buckled, Caleb catching her as she gasped. "No, that can't be true." The locket slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor, its echo a haunting reminder of the betrayal woven into her bloodline. Caleb's mind reeled. Robert, the man who'd raised Elise, could be a killer. The dramatic irony was unbearable. Caleb's quest for connection had exposed a love turned lethal, and Elise's trust in her father was shattering before his eyes. "We need to go to the police," Caleb said, his voice steady despite the storm within. Elise nodded, her tears silent but resolute. For Anna, for Nathaniel. As they left the workshop, David's broken figure receding into the shadows, the weight of their next step loomed large. The truth was a double-edged sword, cutting through love and loyalty, leaving them to face a past that refused to stay buried. The clock ticked past midnight in Asheville, North Carolina on June 16, 2024, the air thick with the damp chill of a late spring night. It was 12:03 a.m. Eastern Time. The streets outside Caleb Monroe's craftsman-style home cloaked in shadow, the faint drip of rain lingering from the earlier storm. Inside, the living room glowed faintly under the soft hum of a single lamp, its light casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. Caleb, 34, sat on the edge of the worn leather couch, his hands clasped tightly, the clammy sweat on his palms a stark contrast to the cool air. Beside him, Elise Harper, 32, stared at the locket that had slipped from her fingers hours earlier at David's workshop, its silver surface now dull and tarnished on the coffee table. The weight of David's words, "It was Robert," hung between them like a guillotine blade, poised to sever the last threads of Elise's trust in her father. Elise's breath hitched, her hazel eyes glassy with unshed tears as she broke the silence. "My dad, he couldn't have done this, Caleb. He's gruff, sure, but a murderer." Her voice cracked, the sound raw and vulnerable, cutting through the quiet. Caleb reached for her hand, his grip firm yet gentle, the warmth of her skin grounding him. Amidst the chaos, "I don't want to believe it either," he said, his voice low. "But the locket, the timeline, it fits. We have to know for sure." The dramatic irony was suffocating. Caleb's quest to connect with his past had turned Elise's world upside down, forcing her to question the man who'd raised her, all while their love became the anchor, holding them together. They decided to confront Robert the next morning, the decision hanging heavy as they lay awake, the tick of the clock, a relentless reminder of the truth they couldn't escape. At 9:17 a.m., under a grey sky that mirrored their mood, they drove to Hendersonville, the mountain road slick with residual rain. The scent of wet pine filled the car, mingling with the tension that thickened with every mile. Robert's ranch house loomed ahead, its sagging porch a silent witness to the secrets it held. As they stepped onto the creaking wood, the door swung open, and Robert Harper, 62, stood framed in the doorway, his grey hair disheveled, his mechanic's hands clenched into fists, his eyes, so like Elise's, narrowed with suspicion. "Back again?" he growled, his voice rough with sleep or defiance. It was hard to tell. Elise stepped forward, her voice trembling but resolute. "Dad, we know about Anna, about the love triangle with David and James, and what David saw that night." She held up the locket, its faint initials glinting in the dim light. This was hers. "Why do you have it?" Robert's face hardened, a muscle twitching in his jaw as he snatched the locket from her hand, his fingers trembling. "You shouldn't have come here," he muttered, turning away, but Caleb blocked his path, his voice steady despite the storm within. "We deserve the truth, Robert. Did you kill her?" The air grew thick, the distant bark of a dog the only sound as Robert's shoulders slumped, the fight draining from him. He gestured them inside, the living room smelling of old tobacco and motor oil, the faded plaid couch sagging under their weight. Robert sank into an armchair, his head in his hands, the locket clutched tightly. "Anna was my little sister," he began, his voice a gravelly whisper. "She was everything to me, bright, beautiful, too good for this town. I loved her, not just as a brother. When she started dating David, I was jealous, but I buried it. Then James Carter came along, that drifter with his smooth talk, and she left David for him. It broke David, and it broke me too. I couldn't stand seeing her with someone else." Caleb and Elise exchanged a glance, the tension coiling tighter. Robert's eyes darkened, lost in the past. That night, June 12, 1989, I went to her apartment. I just wanted to talk, to make her see reason. But she was angry, said I was smothering her, that she loved James. We argued, voices loud enough to wake the neighbors. Then, I don't know what happened. I had a knife in my pocket from fixing a tire earlier. She turned away and I lost it, one stab. She fell and there was blood everywhere. I panicked, took the locket as a piece of her and ran. Elise's sob broke the silence, her hands flying to her mouth as tears streamed down her face. Caleb pulled her close, his own heart shattering at the confession. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Caleb asked, his voice hoarse. Robert's gaze dropped, shame etched into every line of his face. "I thought David would take the fall. He was there earlier, pacing outside. I saw him leave before I went in. But when the cops didn't charge him, I kept quiet, lived with it every day. Since, the room spun for Elise, the man she'd called Dad, now a stranger cloaked in guilt. You let me grow up with this hanging over us," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You let Nathaniel grow up without a mother." Robert's head snapped, up his eyes pleading. "I'm sorry, Elise, I thought I could bury it. But you digging it up, it's my punishment." Caleb stood, his voice firm despite the ache in his chest. "We're going to the police, Robert. For Anna, for Nathaniel. Robert nodded, a defeated slump to his shoulders, the locket slipping from his hand to clatter on the floor. As they left, the weight of the confession lingered, the rain beginning to fall again, a cold mirror to Elise's tears. At 11:45 a.m., they arrived at the Asheville police station, the air inside sharp with the scent of ink and old paper. Detective Sarah Bennett, 48, a woman with steely grey eyes and a no-nonsense demeanour, met them in a small interview room, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Caleb recounted the DNA match, David's account, and Robert's confession, his voice steady but his hands trembling. Elise handed over the locket, her fingers lingering on its surface. "Test it," she said, her voice barely audible. "If it's true, I need to know." Sarah nodded, her expression softening as she took the evidence. "We'll reopen the case. If Robert's DNA is on that locket with Anna's blood, we've got him, but we'll need to track down James Carter, to see if he's still a factor." The process began. A whirlwind of forensic analysis and witness interviews, the days blurring into a haze of tension. On June 20th, 2024, at 2:32 p.m., Sarah called them back. The station was quieter now, the hum of activity subdued as she laid out the results. The locket confirmed it. Anna's blood, Robert's DNA. "We brought him in this morning. He's confessed fully." Elise's knees buckled, Caleb catching her as she buried her face in his chest, her sobs muffled against his shirt. Sarah continued, her tone measured. He admitted the argument, the stab wound, said he acted in a fit of rage and regret. "We're charging him with first-degree murder. But there's something else. A letter found in Anna's apartment during the original investigation, unopened until now. It's addressed to James Carter, postmarked June 10th, 1989. It hints she was planning to leave him, maybe reconcile with David. We're locating James to see if he had a motive too." Caleb's mind raced, the new detail a spark in the dark. "You think he could have been there that night?" Sarah shrugged, her eyes narrowing. "Possibly. Robert's confession doesn't rule it out. We'll need to find him." The dramatic irony was crushing. Caleb and Elise had unearthed Robert's guilt, but the spectre of James Carter loomed, a shadow that might complicate the justice they sought. That evening, back home, the air heavy with the scent of rain-soaked earth, Elise sat on the couch, her eyes red-rimmed. "I don't know who my dad is anymore," she whispered, her voice hollow. Caleb knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "We'll get through this, Elise, for Anna, for Nathaniel. We're stronger together." Their love, tested by betrayal, became a lifeline, but the uncertainty about James gnawed at them. The next day, June 21st, 2024, at 10:09 a.m., Sarah called again. "We found James Carter," she said, her voice tense. "He's in Tennessee, just got out of prison for assault. He's agreed to talk, but he claims he has evidence Robert paid him to stay silent back in '89. We're bringing him in tomorrow." The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Robert's confession might be only part of the story, and James could hold the key to a deeper conspiracy. As night fell, Caleb and Elise stood on their porch, the stars obscured by clouds, the air cool against their skin. "What if James knows more?" Elise asked, her voice trembling. Caleb squeezed her hand, his resolve hardening. "Then we'll face it, together." But as they turned to go inside, a shadow moved across the street, a figure in a worn jacket watching them. The hairs on Caleb's neck stood up, the mystery deepening into something more sinister. June 22nd, 2024, 8:47 a.m., Asheville, North Carolina. The morning sun struggled through heavy clouds, casting a muted glow over the Asheville police station. Caleb Monroe and Elise Harper sat in the same stark interview room, the air sharp with the scent of stale coffee and antiseptic. Detective Sarah Bennett stood across from them, her grey eyes steady but tinged with unease. On the table lay a sealed evidence bag containing Anna's unopened letter to James Carter, its edges yellowed with age, and a grainy photograph of a younger James, his sharp features unmistakable even decades later. Caleb's pulse quickened. He'd seen that face before, in the shadows across the street last night. "James Carter arrived an hour ago," Sarah began, her voice measured. "He's in the next room, ready to talk. His story's complicated. He claims Robert paid him $5,000 to leave town after Anna's death and keep quiet about what he saw. But he's got something else, a journal Anna kept hidden in his old apartment. He says it proves Robert wasn't alone that night." Elise's hand tightened around Caleb's, her nails digging into his palm. "Not alone," she whispered, her voice raw from nights of sleepless grief. Caleb's mind raced, the pieces of the puzzle shifting. His DNA test had confirmed he was Anna's son, left in foster care after her death, raised without knowing his mother's name until now. But the question of his father, David or James, remained unanswered, and the shadowy figure outside their home loomed like a warning. Sarah led them to an observation room, the one-way glass revealing James Carter, now 60, his lean frame hunched in a chair. His hair was grey and thinning, but his eyes held the same cunning spark from the photograph. A worn leather journal sat before him, its pages dog-eared and stained. As Sarah began the interrogation, Caleb and Elise watched, the tension coiling like a spring. "Tell us about the night Anna died," Sarah said, her tone firm. James leaned back, his fingers drumming on the table. "June 12th, 1989. I was at Anna's apartment earlier, around 8 p.m. We argued, she wanted to end things, said she was going back to David. I was angry, sure, but I left. Went to a bar, got drunk. When I came back around midnight to apologize, I saw Robert leaving her place covered in blood. He looked wild, like he'd lost his mind. He saw me, pulled me aside and offered me cash to disappear. Said if I didn't, he'd pin it on me." Caleb's breath caught. Robert's confession had seemed final, but James's story suggested more. "What's in the journal?" Sarah pressed. James slid it toward her, his smirk faint but chilling. "Anna wrote everything, her fights with Robert, her plans to leave me, even her fear of someone else. She called him the Shadow, said he followed her, left notes. I think it was David," Elise gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "David, he loved her." Caleb's mind reeled. David had seemed broken but honest when he pointed them to Robert. Could he have been hiding his own guilt? Sarah opened the journal, her eyes scanning the cramped handwriting. Anna mentions a shadow watching her, someone she didn't trust. She wrote, "David's changed since I chose James. He's angry, but it's more than that. I'm scared he'll do something." The room spun for Caleb. He'd trusted David's story, but now doubt crept in. "We need to talk to David," he said, his voice steady despite the storm within. Sarah nodded. "He's on his way, but there's more. Forensics found a second set of fingerprints on the locket, not Robert's. We're running them now." At 1:15 p.m., David arrived, his weathered face pale under the station's harsh lights. He sat across from Sarah, Caleb, and Elise, his hands trembling as he gripped a paper cup of water. "I didn't hurt Anna," he said before anyone spoke, his voice cracking. "I loved her. When she chose James, it broke me, but I'd never—" He trailed off, tears brimming. Sarah slid the journal toward him. "Anna wrote about you, said you scared her, and we found your fingerprints on the locket." David's eyes widened, his breath hitching. "I gave her that locket," he said, his voice desperate, "years before, when we were together. I didn't know Robert kept it after—" He stopped, his gaze dropping. "I was outside her apartment that night, like I told you. I heard shouting, Anna and Robert. I wanted to go in, but I was a coward. I left before it happened." Caleb leaned forward, his heart pounding. "Did you see anyone else? This shadow she wrote about?" David's eyes darted to the journal, then back to Caleb. "There was someone, a guy in a dark jacket watching from the alley. I thought it was James, but it could have been someone else. I didn't stay long enough to find out. The pieces clicked into place, a chilling picture forming. Caleb's mind flashed to the figure outside their home, the same dark jacket, the same sense of menace. "We need to find that man," he said, his voice urgent. Sarah's phone buzzed and she stepped out, returning moments later with a grim expression. "The fingerprints on the locket, they're James's, and we cross-checked Anna's journal with old police reports. There was a third man, a local named Thomas Reed, known for stalking women in the area. He was questioned in '89, but released for lack of evidence. He's still in Asheville." That evening, 6:23 p.m., Caleb and Elise stood outside Thomas Reed's rundown trailer on the edge of town, the air thick with the scent of pine and gasoline. Sarah and two officers flanked them, guns drawn as they approached. The door creaked open, revealing Thomas, now 65, his gaunt face shadowed by a hood. In his hand was a knife, its blade glinting in the fading light. "I knew you'd come," he rasped, his voice low and unhinged. "Anna was mine. She didn't see it, but she was." Sarah's voice cut through the tension. "Drop the knife, Thomas. We know you were there that night." Thomas's eyes flickered to Caleb, a twisted smile forming. "You're her son, aren't you? I saw you poking around. Robert took the fall, but I was the one who loved her." His confession spilled out, wild and unfiltered. He'd followed Anna, obsessed, leaving notes she'd mentioned in her journal. When Robert stabbed her, Thomas was there, watching from the shadows, taking the locket as a trophy after Robert fled. Caleb's stomach churned, the truth a bitter pill. Thomas had been the shadow, the final piece of the conspiracy. As officers cuffed him, Elise clung to Caleb, her tears soaking his shirt. "It's over," she whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. "For Anna, for Nathaniel." June 25th, 2024, 9:12 a.m. The sun broke through the clouds as Caleb and Elise stood by Anna's grave, a simple stone in a quiet Asheville cemetery. Caleb knelt, placing a new locket beside the headstone, its silver gleaming with an inscription, "For Anna, forever loved." The DNA test had confirmed David as his father, a bittersweet truth that gave Caleb a connection to Anna beyond the pain. Robert and Thomas faced trial, their confessions unraveling the decades-old cover-up. James, though complicit in his silence, was charged as an accessory, his journal sealing the case. Elise took Caleb's hand, her eyes still red but steady. "We found her justice," she said, her voice soft but strong. Caleb nodded, the weight of the past lifting just enough to let him breathe. "And we found each other," he replied, their love a beacon through the darkness. As they walked away, the breeze carried the scent of fresh earth, a promise of healing. The mystery was solved, but Caleb knew Anna's story, his story, would stay with him forever, a reminder that truth, however painful, could set them free. In the quiet of that Asheville morning, Caleb and Elise found more than justice for Anna. They found the strength to face a past that had shaped them, broken them, and ultimately bound them closer. Anna's murder, a tangled web of love, jealousy, and obsession, had lain dormant for decades until a simple DNA test cracked it open, exposing not just Robert's guilt, but Thomas Reed's sinister role and James Carter's cowardly silence. For Caleb, discovering he was Anna's son and David's heir was both a wound and a gift, a bridge to a mother he'd never known. For Elise, the betrayal of her father's secret was a scar she'd carry forever. Yet her love for Caleb became the light that guided her through. This story is a testament to the power of truth, no matter how deeply buried. It reminds us that the past is never truly gone. It lingers in our blood, our choices, and the courage to ask questions. Caleb and Elise's journey shows that even in the face of unimaginable betrayal, love and resilience can prevail. As the haunting echoes of Anna's truth fade, ask yourself, have you ever unearthed a family secret that turned your life upside down, or felt the burning urge to solve a mystery that refuses to stay buried? This is more than a story, it's a call to action. Smash that subscribe button now to join our relentless community of truth hunters, where every video peels back the layers of real-life enigmas like Caleb and Elise's journey. Hit the bell icon to never miss a chilling revelation, and drop your own hidden family tales in the comments. Let's unravel the shadows together. Turn on post notifications for exclusive drops and share this video with someone who craves the truth, because the past demands to be heard. Join us on this gripping quest. Subscribe today and let's expose the secrets that shape us, one mystery at a time.